This is our 5th year presenting navigation sciences to the group, and it was a good time for me to sort of reflect back on some of the things that we've done over these past 5 years. From really, when we first came here, we had an idea in 2 patent applications that were developed at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. And really since then, we've now have multiple patents that have been issued, additional patents that are pending. We've done a clinical feasibility study of 25 patients at a single site at the Brigham. We've done a pre-sub meeting with the FDA. And most importantly, we have still some capital in the bank when we did this all on $5.5 million. So we've been extremely sensitive to our burn rate, being a virtual company, but also with employees as well to manage the program. Our first go-to market application is for lung cancer. And the key that I want to bring out is, and it's been sort of discussed earlier in a couple of the sessions, lung cancer is really at a tipping point of really starting to be diagnosed earlier, and then new methods of treatment or therapy are coming into place. As was discussed earlier, there's a real push to have early stage screening for lung cancer. Right now, there's just really a very, very small amount of patients are screened, but in very large clinical studies, it's shown a 20% reduction in mortality due to low-dose screening. This creates a tremendous opportunity for patients to come in and have surgical procedures, which is really the area that we're focused on. And if you compare that with breast and prostate cancer, where roughly about 70% are screened at an early stage, stage 1, stage 2. On lung cancer, it's somewhere between 3 to 5%, depending upon where you are, actually get screened for lung cancer. As a result of that, many patients are diagnosed at a stage 4, which has about a 15% 5-year survival rate. Versus a stage 1, which has about an 85% survival rate if treated with surgical application. The standard of care for these patients are a surgical resection, lobectomy, segmentectomy, or preferably a wedge resection where you can preserve more lung tissue, particularly in individuals that have compromised lung volume. Sorry about that. But these lesions are actually very, very difficult to locate. They're typically 2 centimeters or smaller at diagnosis. They can be sometimes palpated if they're on the surface, but very often they can't be really felt. One of the things, I've been involved in minimally invasive surgical applications from the beginning of my career, starting in sports medicine. And when you place an endoscope into a knee joint or into the belly, you can very often identify the structures very, very easily. But in lungs, the patients are being operated on with the one lung being collapsed. And actually identifying and locating the lesion becomes very, very, very difficult, particularly when they're at stage 1 and very small. So what we've done is we've developed an electromagnetic sensor that's placed in close to where the lesion is. And then we place also sensors on the instrumentation. And we're able to measure in real time in the operating room the distance between where that sensor is placed and where the cutting instruments are located. And I think this cartoon sort of demonstrates it. We have a cart that's in the operating room, so it's capital equipment in combination with a consumable instrumentation and what we call the J-bar, the electromagnetic sensor, which is much like a fish hook that is placed into where the lesion is and locks in place to then guide the surgeon. We can place that really by 3 different methods. One is through palpation. The second is with cone beam guidance for intraoperative CT scan. But a third one that we feel is very exciting is being able to place it with the interventional bronchoscopy procedure, where in this program has actually been funded by the NCI, National Cancer Institute, on a phase 1 study. We're just now submitting for our phase 2 application. And that's where we place the sensor with the bronchoscope, and then the thoracic surgeon retrieves the actual wedge intraoperatively. And that can be placed through products like the ion, for instance, through their working channel. I mentioned earlier that we completed a 25-patient clinical study. In this video here, you see the actual placement of what we call the J-bar through an 18-gauge needle into close where the lesion is. Then we've added sensors to the surgical stapler. And in real time, this is an earlier version on our software, in the real time, they're able to see a readout of the distances from the stapler to where the sensor is placed. Our IP surrounds not just the measurement distance, but also creating 3D models of the tumor and what the margin is around the tumor itself to then be able to guide in real time the actual surgical resection, thereby ensuring a clear margin, depending upon what distance the surgeon chooses to want to make. When we look at the actual size of the market, I think this is likely underrepresented, particularly as we see an increased number of stage 1 diagnosis. But it's significant for lung worldwide, as well as other soft tissue tumors or solid tumors in head and neck, neuro, and thyroid. So a significant opportunity for our device, not just in lung cancer, but all cancer type resections. This chart sort of really represents the increased number of minimally invasive lung cancer procedures in the US for our total addressable market, and even what we think in our early forecasts, what kind of market penetration we can have when we launch our product in 2025. I also mentioned earlier really about our patenting. Our patents really go around a number of key items that were protected, not only in the distance, but a lot of on the 3D modeling of the tumors and modeling of the margin around the tumor in the soft tissue deformation algorithms that we have developed around our intellectual property. So a little bit on the timeline here. So initially, the technology was developed at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. There was a significant amount of R01 grants that were devoted specifically to the technology in an early form of using a fiducial marker that was placed in the development of what's called the IVATS procedure. And there's been a significant amount published on that procedure from the Brigham's institution, and I think recorded roughly about 125 patients in those studies. We then took the technology over and started working on using electromagnetic sensors so that you can implement this technology not just in an operating room that has a cone beam CT, but you could implement it in the standard operating procedure to be able to have a more global application of the actual system itself. To date, we've raised $5.5 million. And we're in the midst of closing our B round, which we have $2 million open on a B round. We plan on doing our 510(k) application in the end of this year, early 2025. We're a class 2 device. And then we'll do a commercialization round of roughly between $8 to $10 million. And that would be for our early commercialization. I think as you all may be aware, the strategic interests in this really fall into 3 groups. It's robotic, it's imaging companies, and also minimally invasive surgical companies that really have expressed interest. And we've had a number of discussions with a number of strategics about our technology and how it could fit into both their distribution channel, but also in their product groups. The team are really my 3 co-founders, 2 of which are at the Brigham and practicing. Like everybody, we have a board that represents neurosurgery, represents transplant and liver surgery, where we have good applications, interventional pulmonology. So in summary, I mean, we really think about what are the 3 categories that we have a strong influence in to drive our product adoption. For patients, it's really reduced local recurrence through minimally invasive surgery, shorter length of stay, and lung function preservation. For the providers, it really has a real key application to be able to identify and more easily find the lesion in the surgical procedure itself. So with that, we've reviewed a couple of key things of what we've done over the last 5 years, because when we first came here, as I mentioned earlier, we were really pretty much an idea and 2 patents. We've moved, I think, a significant amount of milestones along the way for really a very, very minimal amount of capital to date. And I think the team is very proud of what we're going to be able to achieve and accomplish. So with that, I thank you very much. And again, I thank LSI for allowing us to present.